welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, and I'm your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. Have an incredible program lined up for you today. Our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz, is going to be joining us in just a few moments to get you up to speed with everything that you have to know about redistricting efforts here in the state of Texas. He has been following this since the beginning, and we've got a lot in store for you when it comes to that subject, again, in just a few minutes. But first, as always, let's go ahead and take a look at what's happening across the border, starting with border arrests falling to the lowest level since 1970 in the last fiscal year. That's according to Homeland Security and U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Now, on the southwest border, 237,000 migrants were apprehended, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually the lowest number in 55 years. Now, the government says on average, 279 people were detained last month compared to more than 5,000 a day between 2021 and 2024. If you remember those immigration programs ending back during the end of the Biden administration, those numbers were really, really high leading up to those last final hours here along the border on the Rio Grande. In a news release, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said that we have had the most secure border in American history, and our end-of-year numbers prove it. We have shattered multiple records this year, and once again, we have broken a new record with the lowest number of southwest border apprehensions in 55 years. Also happening, the American Civil Liberties Union is accusing the Trump administration of unlawfully punishing immigration detainees for past crimes by transferring them to a notorious Louisiana prison. Now, a lawsuit filed on Monday says the inhumane conditions of the newly opened, quote-unquote, so-called Louisiana lockup violate double jeopardy protections. It also says detainees should be released if the government fails to deport them after 6 months. The prison, better known as Angola, was once a slave plantation and has a pretty grim history with it. The lawsuit was filed on behalf of a Honduran man and convicted felon who has been in ICE custody for 2 years. Moving on, police have arrested several men that they say are responsible for recent high-profile crimes that stunned people living in the past 2 months in Juarez, Mexico. Those include the August 11th killing of 2 municipal police officers and a La Línea cartel leader for whom they allegedly were providing security. Also, the September 19th quintuple murder in a neighborhood near the U.S. border that included 2 teenaged victims. The men were arrested late last week at a home in West Juarez after state police officers saw them getting out of an SUV carrying guns, which are illegal in Mexico. Police also found a stash of 38 guns and rifles and 3 migrants being held for ransom. It's time now to bring in our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz, to talk about redistricting efforts here in the state of Texas. How you doing, Julian?
Hi, Rudy. I'm doing good.
Good to have you. So go ahead and fill us in on what's been happening.
All right, Rudy. What I can tell you is that El Paso has become the epicenter of a political fight that has a lot of implications in the 2026 House of Representative elections. Pretty much, it has been reported that President Trump called up his buddies in Texas and said, "I don't want to lose the House. What can you do for me?" And that was followed up by a letter from the Department of Justice. And the letter says, pretty much, hey, we know that you guys in the past have artificially crafted some minority districts by grouping certain demographics together. And we believe that that is now illegal, whereas it may have had its place in the past to ensure minority representation. The playing field has been leveled, and those districts are illegal. It threatened legal action against the state of Texas. So that was kind of the catalyst, if you would, or the excuse, if you would, to set off this redistricting fight. And although we have reported that it primarily affects 5 districts that are Democratic that could turn Republican, I've been tracking the hearing that's been going on here in El Paso in federal court for the past few days, and now enters its 2nd week. And it's a lot more nuanced than that. Yeah, there are 5 districts that face substantial changes. Most of them are in the Houston area. There's one in the Dallas area, and there's also another one in what you generally would call South Texas, from San Antonio to the Valley. But in reality, when you listen to the testimony, when you recoup the all the nuances of the maps, you see that there's been changes all over the place that could potentially affect much more than the 5 districts that we have been talking about. District, the Henry Cuellar district right there where you are, suffer some subtle changes. Other districts in the state also suffer some subtle changes, and that could dramatically alter the result. It's not a guarantee that Republicans will win all those seats, but the substantial changes also might end up pitting Democratic House members against each other in the new boundaries. So that is one of the reasons why there's this hearing, this trial going on in El Paso Federal Court. We have heard so far from a host of Hispanic and African American rights organizations, also from some publicly elected officials that say this is wrong. You are going to leave minorities. We're going to strip representation from minorities, and this is illegal because you're basing it on race. We haven't yet heard from the state of Texas, but we know that they contested this lawsuit. They're contesting this case by saying, no, it is not based on race. Here in Texas and other border states, we have a curious phenomenon, and that is a high minority populations. There's a lot of Hispanics, especially along the border, Texas-Mexico border, and they tend to vote Democratic. So it's very nuanced. How do you separate, we did this because of the voting patterns, as opposed to you did this because of race and ethnicity. So that is at the core of the argument.
Now, going back to some of the people that have been talking about this, when we got that letter from the DOJ to the state, what was the reaction from folks when that letter was received and kind of, open to the public?
Well, the main reaction has been total outrage and a sense of urgency to stop this redistricting effort. Hence, the lawsuit in El Paso. It seeks an injunction against the changes. You're absolutely right. We have seen literally, some of the top minority leaders and Hispanic leaders in the nation come here to El Paso and tell their story of why they believe this will strip Hispanics of representation. We've also heard from African American leaders who have testified, and I think one of the Hispanic leaders had a very concise argument of what's at stake. If we can play the clip.
We believe that in drawing these maps, the legislature evidenced racial intent to purposely dilute coalition districts, which was explained to you, typically consists of 2 groups, black and whites, that join together to elect a minority candidates. Now, in Austin, for example, where I'm from, that coalition district included Anglos and Hispanics mostly to vote for a Democrat, okay? But this is the opponents, and this would be the state of Texas, Governor Abbott. They deny any discriminatory or racial intent in drawing these lines or these new maps. However, what started this whole process, this mid-decade gerrymandering process, was a letter received from the Department of Justice at the behest of President Trump that coalition districts were unconstitutional and perhaps illegal, which is completely wrong interpretation of the law and the Constitution.
So there you have it. That's one interpretation, the plaintiff's interpretation of coalition districts. In the letter, in the Justice Department letter, the Justice Department noted something very that could be key in this trial, and that is that even if Congress could constitutionally authorize this race-based coalition districts, that cannot be extended indefinitely into the future. In other words, they're saying there was a time and place for these coalition districts to empower minorities, to make sure they had a seat at the table at the House of Representatives, but that time has passed. This is now illegal. So that is the gist of the argument between the 2 groups, and the outcome obviously could alter representation for for everybody here in Texas, and of course, lead to one party retaining control or losing control of the House of Representatives.
Now, you keep mentioning coalition districts, and we just heard Gloria Leal, an attorney for LULAC, kind of talk about the same thing. Can you kind of explain for the folks at home what exactly a coalition district is?
Basically, it is engineering a House of Representatives district to ensure that there is representation that does not exclude minorities. Ergo, if you have a Hispanic cluster in South San Antonio, and it has not elected a Hispanic or someone that Hispanics would like to represent them, well, let's put it together with, let's say, a cluster in South Texas, and that way we have ensured that there's sufficient amount of population that population can elect someone of their choice. It doesn't have to be a Hispanic. Here in El Paso, for the longest time, we were represented by a non-Hispanic, Mr. Robert Francis Beto O'Rourke, and no Democrats seem to have any problem with that in this highly Democratic district. But still, in theory, it was someone that Hispanics wanted to elect, and there were no obstacles, no boundary or population makeup that could prevent them from expressing their will. So that's kind of what a coalition district is. And now the Trump administration's position is those districts are racially, for lack of a better word, manufactured. So we don't need them. And that kind of precipitated this whole discussion. May have been straight up, or may have been, like the plaintiff said, an excuse. But that's at the core of the argument. And
I think we actually have a soundbite from Nina Perales kind of going into even more detail about what exactly it is.
Coalition districts are districts where the majority is made up of multiple minority groups. So coalition district can be Black and Hispanic voters combining to form a majority, or Black and Hispanic and Asian American voters combining to form a majority. There were a couple of these districts in the map that were dismantled. One example would be Congressional District 9, which is an African American Opportunity District in Houston that currently elects Congressman Al Green. The Department of Justice letter that kicked off this new redistricting plan took the position that coalition districts are illegal and should be eliminated in the map. And there are many public statements by Governor Abbott as he called the new special session this summer, saying that the purpose of the redistricting was to eliminate coalition districts. And then, in addition to that, there were Hispanic majority districts that were also caught up in this effort and were also dismantled.
Yeah, so it's kind of a domino effect. Mm-hmm. Not only do you possibly alter the results in the districts that you're changing, but you're changing so much that you could potentially alter other districts that really people haven't been paying attention to. For instance, depending on the political expert that you consult, in Texas, the districts 9 and 32nd are going to be going from safe Democrat to safe Republican, a total 180-degree turn there. Also, districts 28 and 34, which I believe is close to you guys, their makeup changes slightly, which doesn't quite put them into switching from Democratic to Republican, but kind of makes them go from safe to likely, or even to toss-ups. So it affects a whole swath of geography in the state of Texas.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, Julian, but we're definitely going to continue this discussion when we return. So please stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 1 minute. Welcome Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mideles. Joining me today are El Paso correspondent Julian Resendiz here to talk about all the redistricting efforts that are happening here in the state of Texas. Before we kind of move on to what local GOP members say regarding redistricting, when I say local, I mean two of our representatives, state representatives here in the Rio Grande Valley. I wanted to hear what, we were hearing from folks from LULAC and some other organizations. What is the prediction for how this is all going to kind of end from them?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that. Before giving you the answer, let me just summarize what the testimony has been in the past few days. We've been tracking it closely. Sometimes we're not there because of time commitments, but we certainly are tracking all the reporting that's coming out of it. And what the latest that we've heard is that there's a lot of discussion about the minutia of the maps themselves. Why did this block go here into this district? How come X number of people who are either African American or Hispanics were moved over here? So there's been a lot of debate, and there's been a lot of discussion about the accuracy of the numbers, A, used to craft the map by the state, and B, used by the plaintiffs to dispute it. It's pretty much been a very detailed discussion of your numbers are outdated, your numbers are not exactly correct, you're reaching conclusions based on incorrect set of numbers. So at this point, it's just minutia. And that brings us to your point, Rudy. So far, we have been hearing primarily from the plaintiffs because they're the ones bringing the case. So they are explaining their case. They're going into the details. And from the state, so far, we've only heard the rebuttal. But in the coming days, starting today, we're going to start hearing from either state of Texas government officials or consultants or contractors. And later on this week, we're going to be hearing from state officials officially to present their case in court. But we already know what some of them think about this entire scenario. If we can play some of the clips.
Overwhelmingly. However, we still have 28 represented by a Democrat, 34 represented by a Democrat, because of the way the districts are drawn now to shut out those Republican voices. So that redistricting will actually be the real voice of the people down here in not just in Hidalgo County, but in South Texas overall. I do, and if you look at a lot of the counties down here in South Texas, Donald Trump won overwhelmingly. However, we still have 28 represented by a Democrat, 34 represented by a Democrat.
Yeah. So there you have it. And now moving on to your other point, I think there's a consensus among both sides that whatever verdict is reached in El Paso, and it's not just one judge here in El Paso that's going to decide this. It's a panel of 3 judges coming from different regions, from different parts of the region. The consensus is that whatever happens in El Paso in the next week or two, it's going to end up being appealed, debated, and this might go to the highest court of the land. We have one such opinion, I believe.
What they are going to run up against in the Supreme Court is the Voting Rights Act, that you cannot discriminate based on race. And then, so you can talk about partisan elections, and I'm going to have as many people from my party. Let's do whatever you want to. But the moment you draw those lines based on race, that's where you're going to lose.
That's the the national vice president of the League of United Latin American Citizens, which is the oldest and largest Hispanic rights organization in the country. Obviously, the prediction is this is going to go all the way to the Supreme Court. And that's where things are ultimately going to be decided for this Texas case. Because remember, Rudy, we are hearing that California plans to do its own version of mid-decade redistricting. And then we'll have another legal fight.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask. Like, that was my next question. We've been discussing, Texas, because that's where you and I are from, and it has a huge impact on the national level when it could flip some seats. But when you have Governor Newsom, for example, saying, "Hey, we're not only going to flip seats to match you, but we're going to flip more seats to the blue side," has there been any kind of talk from the federal government about anything that has to do, like, should they start redistricting, trying to redistrict in other states, things like that, to kind of try to match what California will do?
Not yet, but whenever California makes its next move, the administration is going to challenge it. And then, like I said, this whole thing is going to be decided by the Supreme Court in more ways than one. Not just deciding, yes, the Texas map is good, yes, the California map is good, but the nuances of what the justices determine. You can do it under these circumstances. You can do it here, but not here. That is ultimately going to influence what California or any other state, whether it's blue or red, does, because they'll have to adjust to those parameters. Otherwise, they're going to run into a brick wall.
Now, you said we're expecting to hear from the state. What day are they expected to kind of present their case in court?
I believe today we were going to start hearing from a consultant that had to do with the drawing of the maps. I know that several state officials, including, at least on paper, Governor Abbott, are scheduled to testify or present testimony. So we're going to see them starting today and for the rest of the week, very possibly.
And again, how long, do we know how long these processes usually take? Is there any kind of timeline on when we should finally get an answer, or is it just kind of, hurry up and just wait?
Yeah, there's obviously no timeline, and something so sensitive as determining which party controls the House of Representatives in 2026. But the prediction says that the testimony is going to continue through the end of this week at least, possibly into next week. And we already have seen a very long list of witnesses and a very lengthy questioning, rebuttals by the state, presentations, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to be here at least through next week.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your reporting on this, Julian. You've been covering it since, it kind of popped off a couple months ago, and you've been staying on top of it for us. If you'd like to read more of Julian's reporting to kind of catch up to the point we are at now, or maybe you want to see what happens over the next couple of days, because I'm sure he's going to be keeping his ear on the grounds of the courthouse, please make sure to visit borderreport.com for more. Thanks so much, Julian.
Thank you.
All right. Stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 1 minute. Welcome back to Border Report Live. Over the last couple of days, we've told you about several states like Illinois, Oregon, suing the Trump administration to block the deployment of federal troops to some of their larger democratically controlled cities. Well, the White House is now vowing to challenge any lawsuits that try to stop President Trump from deploying National Guard troops to those cities. And many governors are saying they don't want their troops to be deployed, while others, like our governor here in Texas, Governor Greg Abbott, have actually offered up troops to help the Trump administration. We just learned a short while ago, actually, that Texas National Guard troops have already got boots on the ground in Chicago. So we'll have more on that on Border Report later on this week. But first, let's go ahead and take a look at what's happening now.
What they
And we apologize for that technical difficulty we're having there. We will have more on this tomorrow, though, as we continue. But before we go today, do have a few housekeeping things to tell you about, starting with now you can keep up to date with all the things happening across the border. while you're on your commute home. Maybe you're walking the dog. Maybe you're taking the little one out for a stroll in the stroller, because Border Report Live is now available in audio form, podcast form to be specific. You can listen at any of the 4 locations that you see on the bottom of your screen there. That's Apple Podcasts, the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, and YouTube. So make sure to like, subscribe, and download the Border Report Live podcast today to stay up to date on everything that's happening across both the southern and northern border. Also, don't forget to check out our partners at Political Power Ranker. It's a weekly show tracking the movers, shakers, and rule makers in American politics. Nextstar's Director of Political Content, Chris Berg, and Director of Emerson College Polling, Spencer Kimball, break down who's up and who's down in the world of politics based on data. A couple weeks ago, I got to take part in a discussion on what's happening in California, speaking of California. And, you know, it was such an incredible show to be a part of, mostly because it's so data-driven. You got to love data. You know I do. All right, well, that's going to do it for us today. For our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz, and the rest of the team here at Border Report Live, have a great and safe day.